Hello, my name is Wes Krause. I'm the curator of the Ghost Squadron Military Museum here in Medicine Hat. Welcome to A Century of Service, the story of the South Alberta Light Horse, Alberta's regiment, and Medicine Hat's cavalry. With me today is Lieutenant Colonel Robert McKenzie.
Hello, we're here in Patterson Armories, the home of the South Alberta Light Horse, and with us today is Lieutenant Colonel Doug Heine, who was commanding officer from 1968 to 1972. Doug, can you tell me when you joined the regiment?
Well, I joined the South Alberta Regiment in September of 1953. I had served in the Air Cadets for a number of years while I was in high school, and I enjoyed things military, so I thought I'd get involved.
You went from the SAR to the 19th Alberta Dragoons. Why was that?
Well, at the switch, when the unit became the South Alberta Light Horse, I took my officer training at Borden, and then when I came back to the unit after a couple of years in 1958, I went to the University of Alberta. So I transferred to the 19th Dragoons while I was in Edmonton.
And then you came back to the South Alberta Light Horse. What time was that?
In the spring of 1961.
When you went to Borden, how long was the course?
It was a seven-month course.
So you went full-time for 7 months. At the end of that time, you were qualified?
Lieutenant.
During that time, were there any highlights you'd like to talk about?
Oh, I think probably one of the highlights of my time was certainly with some of the exercises we had out at Suffield with 2 troops of tanks. At the time, we had 9 Shermans in the regiment, and we had some great exercises out at Suffield. Also, when I was with B Squadron with the Young Soldier program, we had on Saturday morning here, we'd often have over 200 people on parade on Saturday morning, so that was certainly a highlight.
CO from 1968 to?
1972.
During that time, the unit lost their Shermans. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, that was kind of a sad time. We were at Wainwright for the summer camp at that particular summer, and the tanks were here when we left, and when we returned, they had all disappeared.
What happened to the tanks?
I'm not really sure. They well, the emphasis on the training had changed at that time. We were no longer a tank regiment. We had switched to a reconnaissance regiment. So they pulled the tanks from us, and unfortunately we were replaced with Jeeps.
So you had some good experiences with the Sherman prior to it being removed.
Oh yeah, we had all kinds of training, and we were fortunate that we had some good mechanics that we were able to do a lot of our maintenance on site, and we had some excellent gun camps out at Suffield, and so it was.
I understand you had a fair amount of ammunition to use up prior to the tanks leaving.
Yeah, when they were retiring the Shermans, they had a number of rounds that were spread across various places in the country, and they were able to get most of those here for our final gun camp. So we had a number of rounds, I think something in excess of 2,000 rounds of ammunition, which we fired out at Suffield.
You also participated in the Guidon presentation.
Yes, I was the guard commander for the SALH Guard at that. That was certainly another highlight of my military career. We received the Guidon from Princess Alexandra at the parade, which was held in conjunction with the Calgary Highlanders, and So we had a number of rehearsals and that at Calgary with them prior to that day.
Yes, I remember that myself.
Unfortunately, the weather didn't cooperate with us too well. It was a very cold and windy day that day. But it was a very impressive ceremony, and I was very pleased to be a part of it. The late 60s were not a good time for the military at that time. It was during Trudeau's time, and military was not high on his agenda.
Do you have any interesting stories about characters, not counting Colonel Mackenzie, during your time in the regiment?
Yeah, one of our honorary colonels, Colonel Bahamaluk, was a very interesting character. He served in the Polish army during the Second World War and was very active in the Polish underground. And he had some very interesting stories to tell, and he was a very interesting character. So. And also, Bud Olson was also an honorary colonel, and I learned a lot from both of those two gentlemen.
Bud Olson was our MP.
Yes, he was. Yeah, he was also the agriculture minister at the time.
There was a time when he saved the regiment.
Yes, there was.
That was during your tenure.
Yes, it was. There was talk of amalgamating or disbanding the South Alberta Light Horse, and he was instrumental in putting our case before the defense minister. And also at the same time, there was a talk of moving the Defense Research Establishment Suffield to Winnipeg, and he was also instrumental in them remaining at Suffield. So,
during your time, what was the role of the regiment, and was there any change in unit strength?
Yes, the strength was decreasing over that period of time. It was just after the unification of the forces, and that had a detrimental effect on military in general, but this unit in particular.
When I joined, there were still a lot of World War II vets involved in the unit. Toward the end of your tenure, a lot of them had released, and by the end of it, there were very few left.
No, most of them had left. There's still a few around, but most of them had already gone.
The armory used to be in the outskirts of the city, and we used to drive Shermans up Dunmore Road almost to the highway. The city grew around the armories.
Yeah, very much so. As you say, in those days there was nothing east of us, and the sergeants and officers' mess were just a few blocks east, and those were only a few of the buildings that were in this whole area that were left over from the prisoner of war camp that was in this area.
Medicine Hat was a close-knit community at the time. What was the relationship between the regiment and its citizens?
We had a very good relationship with the city. We had very good support from the citizens. We had a regimental association made up of interested citizens from the area, and we had, there were, I think at one point we had about 80 members from the community that were closely involved with the unit.
During your time, what was the maximum strength of the regiment?
Well, in the early 60s, we were upwards of over 300 people in the unit at that time. And we had a squadron, C Squadron was in Brooks, and we had a troop out in Bow Island.
During that time, the unit won the trophy for the Outstanding Armored Regiment in Canada. For how many years?
I think the unit won that trophy, I think, on 3 different occasions. We won it 2 years in a row, and then we had won it again several years later. So it was quite an achievement for the unit.
The armory was part of the original prisoner of war camp. Was the armory the central social hub for the regiment and the community?
Yes, very, very much so. And particularly the messes, they were very active at that time. There was something going on just about every weekend, and it was a social gathering point for the community.
For the messes, were the public invited for the events?
Well, the members of the association were part of the mess structure.
I heard a story about a rocking horse.
Yes, I think we had 5 of them at one point. They were just a horse that you could move by just shifting your weight forward and backward, and it would move across the floor. It provided many hours of entertainment.
I guess you might say you had horse races.
Yes, we did. In fact, even with lances at one point.
How did your military service influence your life and civilian career?
Well, certainly some of the lessons that were learned here would transfer directly to my civilian employment. Certainly my time at Suffield was very closely linked to what was going on in the military in general. And also when I was with the lab, the management skills that I learned in the unit certainly stood me in good stead in my civilian career.
Since you've been retired, I know you've done some community volunteer work. Can you tell us about that?
Sure, I was involved with the St. John Ambulance for 25 years. I was head of the St. John Ambulance in the city and also involved in the province. I'm still involved on the provincial level with St. John Ambulance. I have done a lot of work with seniors through the Viner Center in recent years, and involved in other organizations, charitable organizations in the city.
I know through the Kiwanis you've been involved with the cadets.
Yes. Yeah, I've been with the Kiwanis Club for 40 years, and when they took over sponsorship of the cadets about 15 years ago now, I am the liaison between the cadets and the Kiwanis Club.
You mentioned you were a member of the Air Cadet Squadron.
Yes, so with the 15th Air Cadet Squadron, yeah.
Have you noticed how the corps have grown and they've declined for a time?
Yes, there certainly was. Yeah, certainly when the young soldier program started, when we had so many of them in the unit here, it certainly affected the cadet corps because they were able to join the unit at age 16, which took most of their senior cadets from the cadet corps. So it had advantages for the unit, but disadvantages for the cadet corps.
You mentioned the young soldier program. When did that begin?
That would have been in the early 60s, about 1960, I think that started. And it went on for about 3 years before they changed the age of that, so they couldn't join until at least 17.
One of the stories I remember from your tenure is when somebody drove a tank into the end of the range. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember the incident. No names, no pack drill, but
We also had a major fire across the street in the garage.
across the way, yes, in one of the huts across the way.
We used to have the outdoor miniature range for the tanks outside the armories with 22s mounted on the Shermans. Do you remember shooting gophers?
Yeah.
That were running across
the range. Yeah.
A lot of shells went down range. Not many gophers were hit, though.
It improved our marksmanship, though.
Yeah. Is there anything else you'd like to say?
Well, certainly, I certainly enjoyed my time with the units. Felt very honored to be the first armored trained officer in the SALH, because I took my armored training right after the switch.
How did you get 7 months off to do the course at that time?
I was working at Suffield at the time, and I was able to get leave of absence for military training. So very fortunate to be able to do that.
What does being a member of the South Alberta Light Horse mean to you now?
Well, I'm very pleased to have been able to serve in this regiment. It has a proud history going way back to 1885, and I think this unit played a major part in the history of the city, and I've been very honored to have been part of that.
During your time in the regiment, you saw changes in doctrine and training tactics. Can you comment on that?
Yeah, when we joined, it was we went through various changes. When the unit first changed to the South Alberta Light Horse, it was an armored unit. Then it changed to a reconnaissance unit, and then in the early 80s, the training changed to civil defense. We were ropes and ladders training, so the military aspect of it was kind of downplayed, and then it came back again to a reconnaissance type training, which it still is. So there's been ups and downs and changes in the emphasis of the training over the years.
Obviously, you had pride in your service. What was your motivation for joining?
I'm very proud to be a Canadian, and also proud of our military history in this country. I think the training that you get would certainly transfer directly to a civilian occupation. You learn discipline, you learn command, and those types of things, management skills. So it would certainly do anyone good to spend some time in the military.
So how did your family react to you joining?
Yeah, certainly my family's been very supportive. In those days, it was usually you were at the armories one night and Saturdays as well, and very often all weekend on an exercise. So my family was very supportive, and I was very fortunate to be able to do that. And also my employer was very supportive, and I was able to get time off to go to summer camps and promotion courses and that sort of thing. So,
Colonel Heine, on behalf of the South Alberta Light Horse, the Regimental Association, we would like to thank you for taking time out to come out and speak to us. And we appreciate your service, and thank you very much again.